Welcome, 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 welcome. How is everybody? Happy Wednesday. I love these classes because it kind of marks the middle of the week. It's a hump day, and I don't know, getting behind home cooking at that point of the week is always a joy. We're waiting for people to kind of come in, but please settle in. Welcome to Palm. We are so excited to have you. You know, at this point, you can probably hear me, maybe you're just seeing me, but we would absolutely love to see you. So if you're comfortable, share your screens, your video cameras. Later on in the program, at any point, you can interact with us, which is really cool. So we'd love to see your beautiful face. But while we're waiting for everyone to come on, we'd love to know where in the world you are coming in from. So throw it in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Where are you? Dr. Hellerstein and I were just talking about it's getting dark. She lives in Boston. I live in Seattle. Is it getting dark where you are, or are you in one of those really cool cities where it's still light out? I'm jealous of you guys. Well, as you guys start to come in, we'll go over some housekeeping. First and foremost, so grateful that you're here. So grateful that you're here. We're really excited. If you don't know anything about Palm Health, it's really the intersection of the joy of home cooking, but it meets clinical care. So really tying those two things together. We believe food is medicine, and that is our religion here at Palm Health. And a lot of you might know me from Homemade, but for the next 6 weeks, I'm actually the head chef of Palm Health, and we're doing this incredible series. This is a standalone 6-episode series where we're really dedicated to, again, how do we kind of marriage this idea that food in a lot of ways is killing us. A lot of people are overweight. There's a lot of diet-related disease, but at the same time, food can save us. And we can really look at food as kind of the answer. And so that's what Palm Health represents. That's what these classes represent. And what makes these classes so special is typically it's just me, but we have some amazing, amazing resources, people joining us. So first, we have a registered dietitian. She is incredible. Please welcome Julie. Julie, do you mind giving a quick intro on yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm so excited for today's recipe. I'm a registered dietitian, so throughout the class, I'll be sharing nutrition tips, some cooking tips and tricks, and be a resource for you.
Yep, and she's got a young kiddo we were just talking about. She's awesome. Thank you very much. And then I just mentioned her, but hailing from Boston, please welcome Dr. Hillerstein. Doctor, how are you? Do you mind giving a quick bio on yourself?
Yeah, hi. So great to see all of you. I'm really happy to be here with you today. I'm an OBGYN at the Brigham Mass General, and I've been practicing for years. And I found, after years of doing things, really people yearn for this information. How can I eat and cook in a healthy way? And so I'm excited to be part of this program. I'm actually the third generation in my family devoted to culinary medicine. So can't wait to get cooking.
I didn't know that. That's so cool. So you have a history of this. Okay, I love that. I mean, amazing. And then finally, we wouldn't be here without this last one. Give it up for co-founder of Palm. She's going to be handling the chat. Misha. Misha's given a quick wave, but if you need anything at all, please make sure to refer to her. She knows everything and anything about this recipe, about Palm Health in general, about the series of classes, which so many of you guys are new here, and we're so excited about that. The goal with this is to get as much feedback from you guys as possible. That is the goal. We really want to know if these are helpful, what else you'd like to see, and really see if these are effective. And more than anything, we'd love to hear from your friends and family. So I'll say this throughout, but please, please let them know Wednesdays, 1 p.m. Eastern, Palm Health for the next 6 weeks. This really exclusive, this really different kind of style of cooking where we get to cook together. But the whole idea is that this is interactive. So please don't hold your questions back. We learn from each other. We get inspired by each other. And that is the whole idea. We're one big group, and we're all marching towards the same goal of how do we just live better lives, and how do we do it with good food? Those two things don't have to be exclusive. So let's dive in. Today we are making, I'm getting chills because this is such a great dish. And I think for so many people, they really just don't knock on the door of Moroccan cooking that much. But this is a Moroccan spiced chicken over the most beautiful millet. And I know some people don't know what millet is. We'll talk about that. But this dish is so warming. It's so light. And to me personally, it's great cold, it's great room temp, it's great hot, it's great the next day. It's just one of those things. It's like chow mein or pizza. You can eat it anytime, at any place, and once you learn it, you never want to unlearn it. It's just kind of one of those go-to recipes. So really excited to walk you through this. The first step is we're going to cook millet. Now, if you're not familiar with millet, I'll kind of show you guys really closely here. So millet is an ancient whole grain. It's actually naturally gluten-free. I think sometimes we think the word grain, we think it doesn't, they all have gluten because we think bread or whatever it is. So this is totally gluten-free, incredible source of protein. We're going to hear a little bit more about it. But the best way to cook this is I've got some boiling water. Okay, really simple. You can use stock. I've actually seen a lot of people cook grains like couscous or any other grains in tea. Isn't that kind of interesting? Like they'll literally put a tea bag in the water and then steam rice in tea and things like that. It actually is really flavorful and a really low calorie way to boost the flavor. So I've got a little bit of water, like I said, on the boil. I'm going to add some salt. And really the ratio is 1 to 2. So 1 part millet to 2 parts water. So this is boiling. I'm going to add the millet in. And you just want to give that like the quickest little easy stir, right? And then you just give it a stir just so it doesn't kind of cling to the bottom. And then I'm going to put the lid back on. And I'm going to turn down the heat to low. So like a simmer. So for me, that's about a 2 out of 10. All right, and that's how we cook rice. That's how we do so many grains, lentils. And so, again, we brought it to the boil. We put in the millet. We turn it down to low. Lid on top. Now, I want to go to Julie. Julie, real quick, there's a million different grains or options we could have served with this Moroccan chicken. Why the heck are we going with millet?
We're going with millet today, definitely to introduce you to a new whole grain. And like Joel mentioned, it's naturally gluten-free. So if someone needs to be gluten-free, that's a great whole grain to incorporate into your diet. Also with your millet, someone asked in the question in the chat, where do you find millet? It's pretty regularly available in all grocery stores. I typically, in mine right now, it's in the baking aisle because it's with all the Bob's Red Mill products and they have a lot of like baked goods, like different kind of flour alternatives. But I've also seen it with the rices, the quinoas, that kind of thing. So we're choosing this millet today because it contains soluble fiber. Our whole grains have that really great benefit of the soluble fiber. And what soluble fiber does, it produces this viscous substance in your gut, which is good because it clings on to all the bad cholesterol or the saturated fat, and it filters through your system to help reduce cholesterol levels.
I love it. We're going to touch on cholesterol in a little bit, but viscous fiber in your gut is not something that sounds good, but I'm glad it is good. That's awesome. That's so interesting. I think it's really cool to understand. A lot of people think, is whole wheat or these whole grains, are they that much more valuable than, processed, white, like is white rice that much worse than brown rice? I'm curious your perspective on that.
So the American Dietary Guidelines recommends that you should make 50% of your grains to be whole grains to get that benefit.
Yeah.
So when I like to talk to people about like weighing your preferences, if you like a certain white rice over brown rice, choose the white rice, but then maybe go half and half brown rice or choose whole grains in other ways throughout your diet.
Yeah, I love
so the goal is that 50-50.
I love the half and half thing, and we're actually going to kind of explore that today. We've got some riced cauliflower. And one thing I didn't mention, and we can kind of just talk about real quick, is just before we dive into the chicken, is just getting your kitchen ready for cooking. In professional cooking, we call this mise en place, when everything's in its place. And the best thing to do is to read through the recipe, pull everything out. I don't think you need to measure everything. I think that's a lot unless you're a total measurer, which my wife is. So she likes to kind of get everything in little cups. But for me, I'm like, that is just too much dishes. That's too much work. So I bring out the jars, I bring out the herbs. But the key is to kind of have everything out so you have eyes on everything. And I like to kind of push things together where they belong. So you can see over here by the millet, I've got our cauliflower rice, I've got our lemon, I've got our mint, I've got our olive oil, because I kind of know it belongs in that camp. And then for the chicken, I've got all of our other ingredients. So take a moment. This is a great time. Just kind of lay them out. And again, just kind of push them to the side. It doesn't have to be super fancy, but it just kind of reminds you what's going to happen, and it gives you kind of a full scope of how to cook this dish.
Hey, Chef.
Yeah.
Before you dive in, two questions for you from the chat.
Yeah.
One is around salt, kosher, sea salt, table salt. What should we do when we're salting things? And then I will ask about the tea and the millet next.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I have a culinary perspective on the salt, but I'm really interested in either Dr. Hellerstein's or Julie's thought on the salt. But for chefs, there's two main types of salt. Kosher salt we love, not just for flavor. Flavor's fine, but you can't really differentiate that versus table salt. It's more for texture. You can feel kosher salt, so when you pinch it, you really understand how much you're pinching. It's a little coarser. It's obviously super economical. It's not iodized, so that's why we love kosher salt. But the second type of salt that chefs love is this kind of crunchy Maldon salt. And we don't normally cook with that. We more just finish foods with that. So you have that crunch. It's kind of similar to what you get on like a baked pretzel. It just gives you that texture. But from a health standpoint, I think it's a great question about salt. Any thoughts, Julie or Dr. Hellerstein?
I'll jump in here. So, from a culinary and a nutrition perspective, kosher salt, the granulars are going to be bigger, so you can actually use less than if you were going to use like a table salt. Also, if you don't need iodine in your diet, you can use a kosher salt, and a sea salt is just a smaller crystal.
Yeah.
So, really just being mindful of which one you're using, because if you're using that bigger crystal, you don't need as much. It's going to have that impact of flavor with a much smaller amount, so you can actually reduce the amount of sodium that you're having in your diet.
This is why I love Palm Health. It's just like little light bulb, little edible light bulb just went off. Thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. What was the second question about the tea? I want to hit that, and then we'll get cooking on some chicken.
Oh, yeah. There was one more question about, you mentioned something about millet and tea. And so folks were asking about how to think about that, what type of tea, like, yeah, if you can give a little tip there.
Yeah, so again, when you're cooking rice, when you're cooking lentils, when you're cooking millet, couscous, what it calls for you to do, instead of boiling it like pasta in big water, right, and then taking it out of the water, it calls for it to have a little bit of water and a little bit of those grains, so really the grains soak in that water as opposed to just boil in it. So it's kind of nice to flavor that water. And so you make tea, right? So you just drop a couple tea bags into that water, fish them out, and then cook your grains in that tea, and it gives it a really nice flavor. So hopefully that answers the question. It's a good little culinary tip. All right. We have got a big braiser. This is just a big, I call it an everyday pan, but it's got a lot of surface area, some nice tall sides. I love this because you can use it as a wok. You can cook so many things in this, pastas. You can bake bread in it. It's an everyday, everything pan. This is the pan. So I'm going to start with a little bit of olive oil, and we're going to sear some chicken breasts, okay? I'm going to do about 3 here. I don't think we need all 4 of these puppies. But I'm literally just going to take them off, drop them in the pool, all right? And then again, we just talked the whole salt story. But I'm going to give them a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. And I'm just going to sear. And you can salt and pepper the other side after the sear. Also, whenever I'm salting anything, you guys, I'm always salting from up high. That way the salt really scatters evenly. I don't really get too close to it. Same thing with pepper. That's why we hold chefs and everyone at restaurants hold the pepper up high. It's so the pepper spreads. I know it also looks cool, but it's both. All right. Now the key here, and we're going to hear about chicken, and I have a question about chicken to Julie in a sec. But the key here with the chicken breasts, guys, don't mess with the chicken breasts. Don't poke it. Whenever we sear something, which is really cooking in a little bit of fat to kind of get a little crust, I find, especially guys, I'm calling out the guys here, we like to kind of prod it, look underneath of it, check it, play with it. I don't know what, it's like a button for us. The key at home, if you want to build a crust, and again, there's no fat on a chicken breast, really. I mean, there's a little fat, but very little. So it's hard to get that browning without the added fat. So if you really want to get a chicken breast nice and crispy, which we're going to braise this, but we still want that browning, don't touch it. Just let it do its thing. It's the perfect time for me to ask a question, and I'm going to dice an onion while I do it. But Julie, why chicken breast? Like, I always wonder, like, I love dark meat too. I am not a white versus dark. I like both for different reasons. But why chicken breasts versus chicken thighs or chicken leg? Like, is there a really big difference there?
So if you're looking for the leanest option, it is going to be the chicken breast because it is the white meat, so it has
Yeah.
the least amount of saturated fat.
Yep.
And chicken is kind of universal. I feel like everyone is a good protein of choice. And when you have these animal-based proteins, it's providing all 9 essential amino acids. And that is great because it's readily absorbable to get all of that great nutrition.
I love that. Yeah, it is. I mean, an easy win for all of us at home if you love chicken. And by the way, chicken is up here as the most popular proteins in U.S. and like everything else is down here. Like shrimp, salmon, they all live down here. We eat so much more chicken than anything else, and which is not a bad thing. I love chicken. It's so versatile. It's so economically friendly. But if all you do is replace your dark meat with white meat, that's a big win in terms of calories, in terms of fat intake, in terms of everything that Julie just said. So I think that's just one of those small, it seems small, but honestly, you can really do that and it works. Like I've had some gorgeous, smoked chicken thighs, which are amazing. They pull off the bone. You can do the same thing with chicken breasts, right? And they're delicious. So you can really replace the two. All right. At this point, I'm just going to kind of check, and you can see my patience paid off. I got a nice light sear. Again, we're not trying to get it insanely brown, just a little caramelized, right? And while that's going, get there. I just diced half an onion. I want to show you guys how I got there. So I take this onion, and whenever we chop, we always do want to hold the knife kind of pinch grip. So you kind of hold the top of the knife, wrap your fingers around the bottom. You have way more control this way. And I just start kind of going through horizontally the onion, but I kind of stop at the very end here. Notice how I don't go all the way through? Then I take my knife out, and I cut little strips. Like that. And then I just cut those strips into little cubes. I think the knife is one of the most intimidating parts of the kitchen. That and obviously the stove. And so I just don't want that to get in the way of you in home cooking. So if knife skills are not your jam, which I get it, they're sharp and a little bit intimidating, my suggestion is to really get and invest in a great food processor. Those are awesome. Chefs love those. So you can just chunk up your onion, put it in there, and that's why that pulse button was created. Pulse, 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 and you have exactly what I just did without the scariness of the knife. So again,
Hey, Chef.
yeah.
What about those mini choppers that do the mini process, the
Those
blend?
are awesome.
Yeah,
those
I
are
love
awesome.
those
Those are
ones.
great because they take up such little real estate in the kitchen, right? Like you don't need to bust out the big machine. Grab a little mini chopper. They look cute nowadays, so just leave them on your counter, and you're golden. All right, to this onion, I've got 2 cloves of garlic. These are already peeled, and all we're going to do here is just slice them. You can mince them if you want, but we're just going to slice them nice and thin into like almost little coins, just like that. Julie, have you ever heard, I'm just seeing on the side of this garlic, I'm just curious, you know that little green bit that sometimes grows in the middle of the garlic? Have you ever heard that like that causes indigestion or something like that?
It really varies from person to person. I've heard that some people have that reaction, but others don't. So I guess it's really person dependent.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was like some, crazy, I don't know, fake story.
Typically, the people who do have the indigestion or are people who are kind of sensitive to garlic,
Yeah,
it's maybe causing other GI issues.
Yeah.
So it could be that too.
totally. Yeah, I think I used to work at a restaurant where they would have us remove those from the garlic. I still curse that chef. That was one of the worst jobs of my life. I also, same restaurant, I'm not going to name the restaurant because it's a very famous one, made me peel grapes to make a grape sorbet. Do you know the patience it takes to peel a grape? Especially when it's like a vat. Ugh. Being a chef looks cool, guys, but there are some non-cool moments, trust me. All right, So real quick, the chicken is now totally brown. It looks beautiful. It's not cooked all the way through. It's still raw, okay? But I'm going to remove it from the actual pan itself. I'm going to leave the heat on high. And the flavor of this dish is now, right now. Like, this is the moment. Because, Luke, if we get down to a top down real quick, you'll see all these brown bits. That's the fawn. That's left over from the chicken. And we're going to release those from the bottom of the pan once we add in all these aromatics. So in go the onions, in go the garlic. And we're just going to start kind of moving it all around. Misha, how we doing out there? Any questions about this?
We are good. I have a maybe one question, and I'll also throw this one over to Dr. Hellerstein around. We're cooking a protein heavy dish right now. We're doing this with chicken. And so maybe there's a question out there around like what does a healthy plate look like and how do we actually kind of like balance that out in our dish? So maybe I'll send this over to you, Dr. Hellerstein. Tell us about a healthy plate.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think there's a lot of information out there, like what is healthy and, different points of view about truth. And I think that you can, it depends on who you are, what your medical issues are, but it's not going to be, the same for everyone. But in general, most of us in the food as medicine world will say, if you look at your plate, 1/2 of it should be vegetables and fruit, okay? 1/4 of it, that lean protein like our chicken, and then 1/4 of it our millet. Well, our millet here is actually going to be with cauliflower, so it's sort of half veggie in there anyhow. But so we got the right side of the plate looking good, and then why vegetables? Well, if you look like this is a Moroccan dish, Morocco is in the blue zone, the Mediterranean, where there are people who lived hundreds of years, and we look at what is in common in those people who have long lives, and they have very much vegetable forward plates where they're consuming lots of vegetables. So this recipe that started out as a meat heavy dish, you can see all the onions that are going in there, and you see that all those greens, those vegetables we're adding to it. So we've worked to make this, primarily meat-centered dish into a mixed dish that's going to have a good dose of veggies. So think of that. You want a colorful plate. You're eating with your eyes. And, I think we'll get that from Joel to see how beautiful it's going to look.
The pressure's on, Dr. Hellerstein. The pressure is on. But yes, I love that way of thinking of meat as almost a condiment, right? Like it's not the main course. It's kind of the side course. It's the side. And that's a whole different way of thinking. Something that my wife and I are trying to do more of with our kiddos. So it's not easy, but it's great. Guys, I'm going to add these spices in. We'll talk about these spices in a sec, but I've got some cumin, some coriander, some turmeric, some unbelievable smoked paprika, really good stuff. And I'm just going to add that right into the onion and garlic mixture. And at this point, your kitchen smells unbelievable. Like, the onions, the garlic, the spices just start to wake up and they start to kind of bloom and open up as they toast. And I'm going to add in some unsalted chicken stock, which is going to deglaze the whole thing. And we're going to bring this to a boil, and I'm just going to scrape the bottom. And you can see the chicken stock just turns this orangey, yellowy, kind of tangerine color, which is so iconic in Moroccan cooking. But I'm curious, and this could go to Julie or Dr. Hellerstein, but spices in general, it's kind of an afterthought when we think about cooking. Like, yeah, it makes things taste good, but does it make us feel good? And I've heard a lot about it, but I'm curious about it. And right before I do want to call out, I totally forgot to chop up the ginger. So if that happens, you can chop it up after the fact and add it in. It doesn't really matter when it goes in. So I'll chop up the ginger, but Julie, do you mind commenting on just spices and their role in keeping us healthy?
Sure. So spices have a lot of great nutritional properties, but also we want to think about flavor without adding salt. So salt in recipes is used to enhance the flavor in our dish, not meant to make our food taste salty. So
Yes.
that little pinch of salt that we're adding in is going to bring out that paprika, bring out that coriander. And paprika is best known for its like pop of color in a dish, but it also contains capsaicin, is a compound found in peppers that has antioxidants and those anti-inflammatory effects. So we're definitely looking to add in those spices. So if Dr. Hellerstein wants to comment more, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the average American consumes like 3,200 milligrams of spice in a
What?
day. And the ADA recommendations are 2,300 milligrams. The American Heart Association is,
Wow.
well below that. So when you add those spices, you can really decrease the amount of salt. One other tip on that, the kosher salt, actually, if you put in 1 teaspoon, it actually has less sodium than 1 teaspoon of table salt. You not only don't need to put it in because the bigger grains stay there and give the flavor, but it actually has less sodium. So
That is nutty. Do you guys just have like researchers? Like, how do you guys pull this stuff? It's amazing. This is why I love this program. It's like, I didn't realize how little spices we're all eating. So up the spices, and I love that little tidbit on kosher salt. You guys, I just added the chopped ginger to this. Again, it doesn't really matter when it's going in. It's going in now. And then, just to kind of, you can add the chicken at any time back into the bath that we're creating with all these spices and chicken stock. So I'm going to add them in now, and then we're going to add some more just to kind of beef up this. And we talked about, the chicken is kind of going to be the side dish here. We have so many vegetables. We have the whole grains of the millet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of tip my chicken back in. And what this does is, in cooking sense, is, if we cooked chicken for a long period of time, just in dry pan and in fat, it will eventually dry out. But by cooking it in moisture, right? And this could be anything. This could be a little touch of wine. This could be some apple juice or cider. This could be chicken stock. It steams it. So not only did we sear it, we're kind of steaming it, and that keeps it incredibly juicy, really succulent, and really good. So just to make this even more flavorful and, again, even more rich with vegetables and beautiful fats, we've got some green pitted olives. These are awesome. Just grab a nice handful of those. I like to kind of squeeze them as they go on just so they kind of break open. Beautiful. And then I've got some preserved lemons. Now, if you're not familiar with preserved lemons, really common in Moroccan and Middle Eastern cooking. Real quick, what it is, and the way they were created was they have amazing lemon groves and lemon trees in that part of the world, and obviously just a plethora of lemons growing out of their ears. So what do you do when you have a gazillion lemons? And way back in the day, there's nothing called a refrigerator. So what do you do with all these lemons? Well, you preserve them, and salt is a natural preserver. It pulls out the moisture, which obviously is where bacteria grows, and it kind of cures the lemon like an olive, right? So that is what preserved lemons are. It's lemons that are preserved in typically a water or a water sugar solution. You can buy them, you can make them. They're super easy to make, and they're really readily available. They're briny, they're salty, they're umami and rich and beautiful, and they just add such a hint of what is that to your cooking. So we have some slices of preserved lemon. If you can't find preserved lemon, lemon zest is awesome. And if you really want, you can take out the middle, but I like to just chop up the actual flesh and the peel of the preserved lemon. I kind of like to keep it a little bit chunky because I kind of like the bite, but totally up to you if you want to cut it a little bit finer, but just kind of bite-sized pieces of preserved lemon. I load it up on my knife, and then this all goes right into the pot with the chicken and the olives. And then, like we've all been saying, adding greens, adding vegetables wherever you can in your cooking is going to change the game. And right now, my favorite green vegetable, this is so hearty, so robust, is this black kale, also known as dino kale. And if I hold it really close to the camera, you can see it kind of looks like dinosaur skin. That's why it's called dino kale. So it's really, really chewy. It's got a thicker texture to it. But again, collard greens would be killer here. Beautiful chard. There's lots of different greens out there. If you want to add spinach at the end, that type of thing. But I love dino kale. So the way that we do it is I just kind of hold it upside down. So I kind of hold it by the bottom here, and then I just strip the leaves off. I'll show you that trick again. So I kind of hold it upside down, hold it on top, strip. So I'm going to continue to do this because this is going to take me a minute, and then I'm going to chop it up nice and fine, and I'm going to add it to our braise. I'm actually going to remove the
Hey,
chicken and
Joel.
add that. Yeah.
As you're stripping the kale, can you help us with any tips on how to find the best kale at the market? What looks like what should we be looking for when we look at color or we look at one to pick one out?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Misha. Let's grab two looks of kale, and hopefully the camera can kind of pick this up. But this one that's a little bit more shriveled, it's a lighter green, has seen better days. It's probably been exposed to a little bit of the elements, just didn't get stored the same way as this one did, which is kind of this dark, rich green. So you want to always look for kind of that darker color when it comes to kale. Also, a tighter, firmer texture. So when you feel kale and it kind of goes limp, we've all seen that before, not great. So when you're at the grocery store, look for the very tight, crispy kale, and that's kind of the way to kind of pick it out. There's no way to smell it. Obviously, look for holes, look for blemishes. That's all basic, but really it's the tightness and the color that really separates good kale from the okay kale. Not that the other kale's that bad.
Can I add
Um,
in one more little fun fact about our kale?
yes.
So sometimes when you have kale in your fridge for a longer time, you start to see that the edges are like this orangey color. It is starting to age, but that doesn't mean that your kale is bad. It is just that the chlorophyll color is starting to dwindle, that bright green, and the vitamin A, vitamin C color is coming out. So don't be alarmed if it has those little edges of the yellowish color, orangey color on it.
I love that. It's such a good call out. Yeah, so many people throw away food. I mean, if you know my background, I'm all about saving food, and so many of us throw away food just because it might look a little different or whatever. There's a million reasons to throw away food, and the reality is most of the time it's totally fine to eat. So that's a really good call out. While this is braising, I'm going to chop this up. I do have a question. I mean, it has to do with kind of chicken and cholesterol, and I don't know. I would love to hear both Julie and Dr. Hellerstein talk about this and kind of go back and forth, but I'll start with Dr. Hellerstein. What is your take on cholesterol? Like, I know that it's just such a hot topic, but I'm curious if you guys can kind of have a little discussion about how we should all approach it at home.
Yeah, well, I think people don't realize that our bodies actually need cholesterol. We use cholesterol to build cells, to make vitamins, to make hormones. The thing is, most of it is made that we need is made in our liver. And we get some in our diet, but when we have too much, you get a buildup of cholesterol or atherosclerosis. And that's, it puts you at risk for coronary artery disease, for stroke, and all that. But some folks are really more sensitive than others, like 25% of us, to that dietary cholesterol. The other factors that affect your cholesterol, it's your genetics. That's like a really strong, if
Yeah,
it's in
that's
your
huge.
family, you got to be extra careful. But also, your age, your weight, are you physically active? Are you smoking? What is your stress factor? Chronic stress and those stress hormones can also increase your sensitivity. And of course, medications, so many of us are on medications these days. But foods with saturated fats can really raise that LDL or the bad cholesterol. And, meat, processed foods are some of the real culprits. Here in our recipe, we've used skinless chicken breasts. So most of the fat in the chicken is going to be in that skin. So we've removed that. And it's a lean protein. We've talked about that. So some of the fiber that we have in this meal, like the kale, the millet, that's going to actually help your body like not absorb as much of that cholesterol that you get in your diet. Do you want to pitch in here a little bit, Julie?
Yeah, definitely. And to add in those notes here, I think it's important to really look at what we're eating as a whole and not just like one dish. So if you're looking at a nutrition label and you see the cholesterol is a little higher, we also want to remember that really that saturated fat or trans fat is contributing to those driving factors of your cholesterol rising potentially. Also, what you can think of too is ways to incorporate more of those heart healthy fats. So your unsaturated fat, like your mono and polyunsaturated fats into your diet. And one of the best ways to raise your HDL, which is your good cholesterol, is exercise. So we definitely want to keep moving.
Yeah, all good points. And I don't know, cholesterol. I have a lot of friends who are high in cholesterol who seem to be in like really good shape. Like they run, they eat well, and to Dr. Hellerstein's point, I mean, you know, for a lot of them, it's just genetics, but something that they kind of monitor. I think it's a kind of an intimidating subject. So thank you guys so much for kind of that input. Super helpful to kind of demystify it. All right, guys. Well, at this point, the chicken is almost done. How I know it's almost done is I actually grabbed a thermometer and I just put it in the middle of the chicken, and we're looking for 165 degrees. That's how you know chicken is totally cooked. But a good tip is, and we're almost there. We're about at 140. Is I'm kind of moving the chicken over to the side, making room for the real star here, which is going to be our gorgeous kale. So I'm going to just start kind of adding this in layer by layer, and this is going to kind of braise next to the chicken, and then we're going to fish out the chicken and just finish the kale in this amazing kind of sauce and bath that the chicken already lent so much flavor to. So it's all kind of happening in one, and you can just see the color. I mean, Luke, can we go back? It is stunning. Like, come on. The orange, the chicken, the green from the olives, the kale. I mean, it's just vibrant. And this is what good cooking is all about. I want to go back to this idea that food is medicine. And the last thing, I was diagnosed with IBD. For me, the first thing I thought about is, there goes the fun. Like, there goes all the recipes I love. And the reality is, when you can cook things from scratch, you're in control. You can have all your favorite things. You can find really amazing swaps. You can get creative. And if you can lean into programs like Palm Health and what we're doing here, we can hopefully inspire you that you don't have to let go of the things that you love. You can either eat them in moderation or you can change them so that they work for your body and they work for your own personal lifestyle. Speaking of which, let's talk about... Yeah?
Quick question for you. Just because you use a thermometer, question came in. If we don't have one, any tips or tricks to know when it's done, or ways to kind of think through that?
Yeah. When you're braising, it's a little tougher because it gives you kind of a misread because there's so much moisture. It kind of makes the chicken feel very bouncy. If you were grilling chicken, I could give you a really cool way to kind of tell if the chicken's done on the grill. We'll save that for a different class. But if you don't have a thermometer, what I would do is, because it's just so easy, and we might as well do it. Let's do it here. We're live, baby. This is what it's all about. So you take out a piece of chicken, and I know this seems really basic, but because this is braised, who cares if you kind of cut into it a little bit, right? And it's just going to continue to braise. So I literally will just kind of cut into the thickest one, and you can just see almost there, but still a little pink and a little hue of pink. The juices are not running 100% clear, so they need just, 2-3 minutes. We're on so close. But again, just touching it, you're not going to be able to tell. Obviously, looking at it, you're not going to be able to tell. So this is one of those beautiful recipes that you just kind of cut it open. We're going to slice it anyways afterwards, so no one's going to know if you cut it open. It's going to be totally fine. All right. So there's that. Let's talk millet for a sec, all right? So millet is done at this point. So I'm going to take off the lid. And what you can see is it's steamed. All the liquid is basically gone. And you can kind of just take your spoon and kind of fluff it. And it kind of looks like couscous or like little grains, right? And so I'm going to take a good amount of this. Right? And by the way, if for whatever reason you mismeasured, you can always take a strainer like this, I want to show you, and just dump this out into the sink, get rid of the excess moisture. So don't feel like you have to nail it. It's totally okay if you don't. So we added a little millet. We're adding this riced cauliflower. Oh my gosh, ricing vegetables. Have you guys seen this trend? Julie, Dr. Hellerstein, I mean, come on. Everywhere we go, I see riced carrot, riced Brussels sprouts, riced broccoli. It's just vegetables, but cut up really, really, really fine, which I love. I love, because it really has that texture that we all love with rice, where it just kind of falls in between the teeth. So we have some riced cauliflower. You can buy it like this, or like I said, and like Misha said, grab a little buzzy little food processor and pulse it till it's fine. And we just add that in to the hot millet, and that literally just steams the cauliflower. And this goes back to this idea of one of the easiest solves is to eat what you love, but cut it in half with vegetables, right? Like, I mean, I love pasta. I love pasta. I studied in Italy, okay? But the reality is I can, make zucchini noodles and replace half the pasta with that. So where can we get creative? How can we inject some of these great ingredients into our diet where we don't feel like we're letting go? So anything to kind of comment on that, Julie or Dr. Hellerstein?
I'll actually jump in first
Yeah.
and say quick plug for next week's class on pasta.
Yeah,
We're going to be
totally.
doing a bolognese, zoodle, lentil mix-up, and it's going to be so delicious. Lots of vegetables. Just wanted to put that in there. But I'll hand it over to the team.
I'll just add a note for your riced vegetables, especially like your cauliflower or your carrots or something. You could, if you don't have a food processor to easily pulse it, you could always do it like on a cheese grater. But also look for convenience. They usually have it in the fresh produce aisle or frozen. Just when you are choosing a frozen option, just look for ones that just have like just the cauliflower. We don't want to add any like sauces or anything because when it gets into a package, there could be adding more things in there. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, I
that.
just wanted to chime in. I love that comment, Joel. If you deny yourself stuff that you really love eating, you bounce back and forth from healthy and unhealthy. When people go on diets, especially when they're, refraining from eating one category of food, it may work in the short term, but they cannot sustain that loss. And, within 6 months, if you've lost even 5-10% of your weight, you're likely to regain it. So if you figure out these sustainable ways of, you love that pasta, you love that starch, carbs are not bad. You just got to figure out a way to do your portion control. So great plan.
I love it. Ooh, that makes me feel so good that a doctor says it's okay to eat pasta. I love that. Okay, so couple of things here. One, while we were chatting, I added the rest of the kale in and I fished the chicken out. So the chicken, including the one I sliced in half, is just hanging out on the side here. Look at the golden color of that. That's the turmeric talking, baby. That is some good spices. And then you can see I'm just kind of reducing. So the sauce that we just made with the chicken and everything is just wrapping itself around the kale, the preserved lemons, the caramelized onions. I mean, this right here, killer side dish. Killer side dish. If you need something new for Thanksgiving, tired of the same old thing, look here. All right, so the millet and the cauliflower has had a minute to kind of dance. Now the cauliflower is toothsome because it was steamed by the hot millet. I'm going to grab a handful of fresh mint. And I can tell you right now, fresh herbs. I'm also going to grab a handful of fresh parsley. Fresh herbs are probably the easiest way to make your cooking stand out and taste great. It really does. Just at the very end, I've got these things. I'm just going to chop them really fine. And with fresh herbs, I don't like to overly chop them because you start to bruise them and you lose their natural flavor. So cut them once, cut them twice, maybe 3 times through, and then stop. And then in we go, right over the millet and the cauliflower mixture. I'm going to squeeze a lemon in there, half a lemon. Looks amazing. And then just a little bit of olive oil. You can use avocado oil too. Salt, a little bit of pepper. And I'm going to mix this through, and what you're left with is just this gorgeous, green, light, fluffy, perfect side dish, which is so good for you, packed full of vegetables as much as it is whole grains. And I don't think it looks any different than like a couscous or rice. It just holds the same. So I love that. I love that. That's hanging out. Sauce is reducing. We're about to plate, which is this is all about. But I think this is a good idea to have a little Q&A time. Is that right, Misha? We're going to do a little Q&A?
We're going to do a little bit of Q&A. So for folks who are in the chat, if you want to send in some questions, I will help read them out. I know that there's one already that came up, which goes back to our idea of cholesterol. And I think folks are asking about lowering LDL cholesterol. So maybe I'll send this over to the team. Like, talk us through a little bit of like, what is LDL cholesterol? Should we think about that in context of improving those numbers if we are managing that? I'll send this over. Maybe Dr. Hellerstein, I saw you in the chat, so I'll kind of put you.
So, I mean, I think there's different types of cholesterol. There's the LDL, there's the HDL. I think of the HDL as like the garbage truck that's going through your system, picking up the fat globules, taking them away, making them inaccessible. LDL is the carrier for, the cholesterol that can cause those traffic jams and that are atherosclerosis. So, we talked about some of those foods that raise your LDL, the foods with saturated fats, meat, lard, processed foods, dairy. Some coconut, even though it's plant source, is saturated. Fried food is a big source. And things that lower it are things that have those soluble fibers that we're talking about. So oatmeal has been like out there as, one of the miracle things that's cheap and accessible, and you do your overnight oats for breakfast. What are some other things you'd suggest, Julie?
So your soluble fiber, so just fiber as a whole, it comes from plants. So I like to kind of remind people like we have bones and backbones, and that's the structure of animals, but the structure for plants is that fiber. So the skin on an apple, or even the apple itself, there's soluble and insoluble fiber in all of our plants. So fruits, vegetables, whole grains, plant-based proteins, all of those are going to give you that fiber, both soluble and insoluble fiber.
Great. Yeah, I think those plants have those sterols and stanols that, help lower your cholesterol. And also, consuming those polyunsaturated fats can also help you lower your cholesterol.
Yeah, I like people to not be fearful of fats. We just want to choose the healthier fats.
Right. I think people, for a while, like fat, it's a 4-letter word. You got to really avoid it. But, example, it would be like salmon, which is a really fatty fish. It has high omega-3s, and that's a healthy fat. So,
Yeah.
All fats do have more calories per gram or per spoonful, but so you got to think about your portion there, but you don't have to veer away from it. I mean, this recipe, we have the avocado oil or the olive oil because we've used that low-fat chicken. So
Yeah.
you don't have to be, worried about that consumption of fat.
And fat's really important too because there are fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamins A, D, E, and K. You need the fat to have it absorb in your body and be utilized.
Yeah, there's a number of really, amazing studies done in the Mediterranean. We're talking about the blue zones, the Mediterranean diet. They're pouring that olive oil on their dishes. It's pretty amazing. And yet their cholesterol, their heart disease rates are lower. So it's the saturated fats, not the plant-based unsaturated fats that are problematic.
Yeah, it's also the portions. I mean, I lived in Italy for a long time. That's where I studied cooking. And, you go to an Italian restaurant here, and the plate is about the size of your skull. It's huge, and the portion is just as high as it's a pound of spaghetti. And there they'll have a little bit of spaghetti, a little bit of wine, a nice big salad. So it's really balanced. And I think that goes back to what Dr. Hellerstein was talking about, which is you really don't have to give up everything. It's just you have to find that balance. Having olive oil is awesome, but in moderation. And how do you kind of work that in? So I love it. Misha, anything else from the Q&A before we plate this puppy up?
I think I'll just add that one of our folks, Kirsten, said that fat carries flavor. And so that's another thing here. It's like if you use healthy fat and you do it in a way that carries a flavor, I think that marries everyone's kind of perspectives here and leads to this really delicious dish. You're making me hungry, Joel.
I know. I just tried the greens.
Yeah.
Different level. They just melt in your mouth, you guys. So let's talk about plating this up. And I think it's really important here at Palm Health. We don't just like to just throw it on a platter, right? I think we do that sometimes in other cooking classes, but here, this is where you want to pause, take a minute, and really think about your plate. And we'll talk to Dr. Hellerstein and we'll talk to Julie about this, but I would like to kind of start with the most important part, which for us is going to be the greens. And honestly, they're the star of the show today. They've been bathing in this gorgeous caramelized onion, chicken stock, loaded with turmeric, a little bit of spice, garlic. I mean, these greens are not your everyday greens, and they have gravy. Look at this gravy that's sitting underneath of them. I mean, just drenched in gorgeous flavor. So there's about half our plate right there of just greens, right? So there it is, right? And then we have this stunning millet that's fluffy, really flavorful, spiked with mint and lemon. But again, it's not the base of the plate. It is a part of the plate, right? It's not the whole thing. It's a quarter of the thing. And then our chicken. You know, it's taking this chicken out. And again, this chicken is so soft. It's just perfect to the touch. And when I cut chicken, I don't like to cut it straight down because you don't get as much mouthfeel as if you cut it kind of on a bias. You know, we eat with our eyes first. So what I like to do is kind of sneak my knife almost a little bit at an angle and just kind of cut long, beautiful slices. This is why I said, who cares if you cut into the chicken? No one will know the difference. When we pick up this chicken, this is about probably 4 ounces of chicken. So again, we're used to 6, 8 ounces of chicken. But to kind of have this 4 ounce, you can just kind of see how this sits on the plate. It really is balanced. The greens are taking up the whole thing, but it doesn't look weird. It's just a different type of look at it. I'll give it kind of a top down so you can really see what we're talking about here. Dr.
That
Hellerstein,
looks
Julie.
so good.
I know.
Yeah, that looks like a perfect plate. I mean, you know, you're saying 3 to 4 ounces of the lean protein. That's really what most people need. I think we're oftentimes worried, oh, am I getting enough protein? But
Yeah.
you know, extra protein actually is stored in your body as fat in the end. So it's not like the extra protein goes to stronger muscles. You have to really
Totally.
think of your portion, and you can get your. Someone asked earlier, you know, about getting your complete protein from plant sources, and I think Julie was talking before. Things work synergistically, so it's the rice and the beans together. You know,
Yes.
the plant proteins oftentimes are missing a couple of those essential amino acids, but if you put the vegetables together, you can get that. Here we're getting, you know, the chicken is a full protein, has all those essential amino acids, but you also can get it just with plant-based foods.
And a lot of people think like, oh, I need more protein to feel satisfied and feel full. But we're actually going to be really full and satisfied because all the fiber in our dish.
Totally.
Joel, tell us, you just dug in. What does it taste like? And our team, like the audience wants to know, what is millet similar to taste-wise, texture-wise? What are describe to us what this
Yeah.
what this food is
Well, I'll
like.
start with saying, I don't know if you guys saw, but my eyes rolled into the back of my head when I ate this. It's really well balanced. It's not overly spiced. It doesn't feel like you're eating something that's going to hurt your stomach. There's a lot of beautiful spices, but you're getting kind of a finish of just a little bit of heat, some really rosy kind of softness from the turmeric. The chicken is beautifully moist. That is the key with chicken. Is there a lot of flavor there? It's chicken breast, but the flavor comes through because of how we cooked it. The greens are one of the best greens I've had in a long time. No joke. They're tender. They're incredibly kind of just salty in a good way. Like the brininess of the olives and the preserved lemons just kind of punch them up a little bit. So they're naturally salty, and they have this just acidic punch. We added a little bit of that lemon, and it just really made a difference. And then you hit this millet, and you asked about the texture. You know, to me, it tastes like a fluffier, lighter rice. Rice can kind of stick to your teeth. It can get a little bit gummy. This is the opposite of that. This is crunchy. It's got a little bit of softness to it. It's really, really nice. And it took the flavor out of that mint and that lemon juice just perfectly. So this, to me, from a flavor standpoint, along with a nutrition standpoint, is a super balanced dish. And I think this is the perfect place to kind of call a couple things out. But before we do, any last thoughts, Misha, Julie, Dr. Hellerstein, or anyone out there that you guys want to add to this as I just kind of gulp this down?
I think
No?
we're just really grateful that you showed us what a delicious, beautiful layered dish looks like. And I think the thing about Palm is that healthy is delicious, healthy is fun, and healthy does take some work. I think we'll be the first to admit that. But I think you really make it come to life. So thank you for showing us this. And at the same time, Julie, Dr. Hallerstein, I think we all learned so much more than we expected around everything that's jam-packed in this dish. So it's awesome.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. And I think, that, I just heard a quote that's, success is in the work that you're not doing. And the reality is that a lot of us avoid work because we think it's tough, it's hard. But the reality is if you want to hit your success goals, if you want to live a longer life, if you want to really, really, really feel great, you have to invest in your ability in the kitchen. You have to. It is going to take a little bit more work, but I'm telling you, it will pay off in dividends. And so excited. Again, I hope that everyone out there enjoyed this as much as I did. I learned so much. So thank you for being here. A couple of call outs. One, we would absolutely love to see you again. So we have another class coming next week, again, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern, right here. It's part of this 6-part series. So
4 p.m. Eastern.
4 p.m. Yep, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Thank you. And it's part of this 6-part series. So this is, again, a very special, beautiful series. So this is made just for you guys, totally free. We just want to get your feedback. And that leads to my next point, which is if anything comes out of this, even if you don't cook this dish, we would love to hear from you. We want your input. So we're going to send you a survey. We want to hear all about the class. How was it? How was the flow? What would you like to see different? What recipes are you interested in? All that stuff. We really want to hear from you. And last but not least, this is so important to our success here at Palm. If you have any time at all, please don't just refer one, don't just refer two, but refer just a total group of friends or family who you think could benefit from Palm Health and what we're doing here for the next 6 weeks. So I just want to thank you guys, Misha, of course, Wilfred, your co-founder, for allowing us to be here. Dr. Hillerstein, Julie, thank you. And then, of course, all of you out there who care and are willing to invest in your health and a brighter future, thank you. We'll see you next week. Bolognese, where we cut the meat in half, loaded with vegetables, but we still pack that flavor punch. We'll see you there. Take care, everybody.